Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's Connect webinar with LJ and George. Before we get started, want to just remind you that if you have questions or comments, love to have you type those into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel over to your right. We'll keep an eye on those throughout the presentation. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can, and those that we can't get to today we'll take offline, and I believe they're going to do up a blog post for us to address all the Q&A afterwards. Speaking of blog posts, this webinar is the culmination of a couple of blogs that LJ's been working on for us at CUGC, and I'll make sure to send you the links to those in a follow-up email after this webinar, so you'll be able to take a look at those. And with that, I will hand things right on over to LJ and George to get us started. Hi, guys.
Brilliant. Hey, Stephanie. Brilliant. Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this CUGC webinar. So my name is Lyndon-Jon Martin, or LJ, or Lyndon, whichever you prefer. I'm a lead Workspace systems engineer that is responsible for our managed partners in Northern Europe. I've been at Citrix just under 6 years now. I've been doing ShareFile pretty much since I joined, so I'm quite well versed in what ShareFile is, how it works, and I've been doing a lot of work over these last couple of years with George. And with that, George, just going to hand over to you. Just do a bit of an intro.
Thanks, LJ. My name is George Christophi. I've been with Citrix for 5 years, working purely for content collaboration, ShareFile. And working with LJ closely, we've done quite a lot of work with the integration with Zen Mobile and ShareFile on its own as well, and into the Workspace suite. So pleased to meet you all, and look forward to the session today.
Brilliant. Thanks, George. So title of the session is Security ShareFile Service in the Secure Digital Workspace. So what George and I thought we'd do is we've only got a handful of slides, not that many. A lot of what we're aiming to actually do is to talk to you and describe what ShareFile is from a technology point of view, and go through a lot of demonstrations around what you can do from an admin point of view, and then also from the user side of the house. I think a lot of the really wonderful features, or cool features, shall we say, that are within ShareFile, most people aren't aware of or just don't know they exist. So this is actually about uncovering those, showing it both from an admin perspective, as I said, and then obviously from a user perspective. So in terms of the agenda, so we're just going to go over what is and why Citrix ShareFile, go through some of the touch points around security, around Citrix ShareFile, so architecture, cover all things like metadata, traffic flows, why NetScaler, fronting it, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll break away from the slides and pretty much go into demos and talk about what the capabilities are. We picked on a few, so keep in mind there are a lot of capabilities within ShareFile. We're not able to do all of them in an hour. We just picked on the ones that people often miss, one, and two, don't actually know that could have used it in that particular way. So let's get started. So what is ShareFile? Actually, sorry, I stuck on a slide just before. I totally forgot about that. So I know a lot of people are probably going to have questions around GDPR. So this webinar is not about GDPR in any way, shape, or form. What it's actually about, it's about actually saying we're here to describe ShareFile and the technology that drives ShareFile around external real-time collaboration, and what it actually means to businesses and to organizations, and the strong security that you get with it, and also the capabilities around the great user experience that we provide within ShareFile. So what I've done is I've just popped in a few questions that I think most people would probably ask is, so where do I get information around ShareFile and GDPR? We've actually created a white paper on this, and that's obviously the first one. The second thing that I tend to get asked from a lot of people is I'm looking for a bit of architectural guidance around ShareFile, maybe just the full stack of what Citrix does. So there's two places you can look for that. You can look at the GDPR microsite that we've actually created that's available on citrix.com. And then there's obviously a great document that we put together that describes the solution architectures around GDPR itself. If the information that you're not looking for is listed here, I'm just going to pause for about 30 seconds to see if there are any questions. If we are able to answer them on the webinar here and now, we will. If we are not able to, we will take those questions and add that to the blog post as to where you can get information. Where it is right and relevant, we will get in touch with you directly. The other thing I would like to just stress and say is George and I are not GDPR practitioners, nor are we experts. So we will answer what we can, what we can't, we will just pause and stop. So with that, I'm just going to see if there are any questions. Have we had anything come in, Stephanie or George? I don't think so.
There are a question there. I'm struggling to read it. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think we're okay at the moment. Excellent.
Okay. All right, last chance. Any more questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, done. Moving on. I'm just going to talk very quickly as to how I perceive ShareFile, and then I want to hand over to George, who's going to talk a little bit about his view around ShareFile. So for me, I view ShareFile as a form of Zen app, but it's purely aimed and geared towards your content and data repositories. And if you think about it, if you look through a looking glass, it's about looking through that looking glass, and ShareFile gives you the ability to look at all those different data repositories and actually bring them in, or sorry, not bring them in, allow you to consume them and use them in your own way. But RT has the ability to wrap controls around those as to what you can access, how you can access it. Also, when you need to share content externally to anyone, you can obviously allow the user to control that experience, or RT can control that experience. So George, how about, let's see what you have to say about ShareFile.
Well, the thing is, we put 3 points up here, which are the most common ones. I mean, there's a ton of use cases, and rather than kind of just bullet point the use cases, because there's a ton of them, we thought we'd just kind of put some business, also some real business requirements, business use cases that we can help with. Now, the single pane of glass comes up, external file sharing. Every single customer uses ShareFile for external file sharing, at least. Then there are more things that you can do with it, such as the streamlined integration within the workspace, supporting any type of desktop, okay, whether it's virtual, non-persistent, persistent. And then, as what you're building out here, LJ, are the business use cases. We've got, the abilities to provide a solution for those type of M&A activities. So for the first one, the virtual deal room, a lot of customers who go out and procure expensive VDR solutions just to have permanent folders or temporary folders with external folk collaborating on a single folder. ShareFile Enterprise or ShareFile, Advanced and Premium can cater for those scenarios. Similar to where people want to have a central place to put financial data in, reports, and have audit trail on who's accessing those documents. You can use ShareFile for that as well. You can take it a step further by using ShareFile to automate some workflows, creating some forms which you publish external or internal to the company. You can have people submit documents into areas, approve those contracts with our approval workflows, then integrated e-signature platform that we have, you can utilize that to get electronic signatures after. So again, there's a lot of customers who don't know that exists within the solution. They don't realize that it's so vast and it's got so many options. We've got a use case of building audit plans and collecting documents into a central space, so people within the organization can have that automatically appear within their workspace on their desktops. Another one, I mean, I've got a ton of these business use cases, use ShareFile to negotiate and collaborate with contracts. So sales, proposals within sales and legal documents. So who's updating or who's editing documents or who's uploading and downloading, who's sharing and distributing, who's been added to that central location and accessing the documents too. So audit is really, really important. And, we can kind of continually provide you with all these business use cases as well. On the next slide, LJ.
Yep.
Let's go.
Sorry, let's just check monitoring questions.
Okay.
So yeah, so from our point of view, if we think about the security around ShareFile, it's a lot of people say to me, well, ShareFile's just sending links here and there to access data. Well, it's a little bit more than that. If you actually take a look at a ShareFile link, right, when I give, say, George or Stephanie a link to this presentation for you to consume at your own leisure, post this, right? You get that link and you access the content. What you're actually not aware of or actually understanding is that link is basically calling home to ShareFile. And it's adaptively understanding, right, I've got this link. What is this link actually allowing the recipient to do, right? And it takes care of things like, well, what did IT set up versus what the user set up? And obviously IT is going to trump the user. So if we take a look at this example link, right, obviously it starts with it's being secure. The second thing is we then identify the organization. In this case, obviously the link I'm using is for ShareFile. It then identifies where's the management plane. Is it home to the Americas or is it home to the EU? Then the action. So in this case, the action is D for download. There's many different options that we have to do different things. And then the final piece is, think of that as a hash, right? That it then understands and knows, right, who, where, what, and what type of access are you allowed. So an example could be I send George a copy of this presentation, but I actually don't want him to download it. I just want him to view it and give me some feedback. So I will then send the link to him. I will restrict his access to that file to say he only has the capability to view the file online only, and I can set it for a certain length of time. Or I could say, I'm going to send this file to both myself, to George and Stephanie, give them full access, but allow them to download it for up to, say, 3 months, and they can download it as many times as they want. So you kind of get the idea, right? It's not just about sending a link. It's about actually calling home to understand, here's the content that I need to send to a recipient. What do I need to do in identifying which organization, what is the action? What is the action? Anything else you'd add on that, George?
No, that's covered it. I mean, there's one other thing, that D, for example, was for the download, but you've got different ones which are F and FO, which are folder and file. So that link is you've broken it apart really well, LJ. That's really good.
Cool. So I think the next one, if we look at the architecture of ShareFile at 10,000 foot, right? So George and I are going to have a conversation around this. Is I think the first thing to recognize and understand is, yes, it's an architectural diagram, one, but the most important thing for you to understand is no matter whether you upload or download a file, no matter how many firewalls you have, how many NetScalers you have or not NetScalers, or how many storage zones you have, your files will always connect to wherever your storage zone is. So whether that be storage zone is where your data, pretty much think of that as a broker or a lens to where the data is sat. It is always going to connect to that storage zone to either upload and or download the file. At no point does your physical file or files or content, however you want to describe it, does that go to any of the ShareFile service management planes. What does that mean? It means when I upload this presentation, it does not go to citrix.sharefile.com or citrix.sharefile.eu. It sends and uploads metadata, and I'll get to what that is in a moment, but the actual file itself, where I'm uploading it to, goes to a storage zone, and that storage zone then determines where that file was stored. And it's a direct connection between the client and the storage zone. At no point do we pass your file physically through any of our management plane. So what is metadata? You probably picked up on that. So metadata is data about data. So in this case, I created this presentation. I've given it a name. I've then uploaded that. So that sort of information is captured and control and managed by the control plane. So the name of the file, who created it, when it was last uploaded, its time and date stamp, and who's also got access to it. We have a full list of what we actually store in both, list of what we store in either the EU versus the US control planes, and that's quite well documented in our security white paper. George, anything you want to talk about quickly?
No, that's really a good diagram as well, just to understand where the demarcation is between cloud repositories, i.e. your OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and the Google Drives box. They're connectors which are hosted out in our cloud zones, connecting the user, and the on-premises integrations that we have with network file shares, SharePoint, and Documentum. So that really shows that that's where their connectors are actually hosted. Yeah.
So George, obviously we deal with organizations of many different sizes, and sometimes we have customers that are a bit concerned around metadata, especially with that four-letter elephant coming up. How do you typically talk about that in front of customers? What can you give people a bit of guidance, a few tips? Obviously, we talked about the security white paper, but how would you manage that expectation, I suppose?
So it does depend on the use cases and where customers have identified potential gaps in their security. So, we've had customers saying, well, we've got mechanisms of transferring files and they haven't got a level of encryption in transit, which is pretty worrying in transit. But ShareFile is all SSL encrypted in transit and at rest where you select it on premises. And also anything in the cloud that we store for customers is automatically encrypted. As well as when we provide a managed service, so customers who do want to put their data in Citrix managed cloud zones, we automatically scan that for antivirus, malware, etc. And we have full audit trails of what's happened. But again, GDPR, well, the word or the acronym that's being used all the time is that, it all depends on users and process as well. We can lock down the environment tightly. But again, I like to have that balance of flexibility and security. Locking it down too tightly, I don't want to push users away into other solutions, but yet give enough security into the, for the customer's use cases to satisfy their needs. So it's generally about uncovering the requirements, uncovering the potential gaps or what users are doing today. Are they diversifying outside of the infrastructure and finding their own way? Because as human beings, we all find a way, don't we? We look elsewhere, we find easier ways. The popular one is Dropbox. And that becomes a problem for our customers because they don't know what's going on with that data. They don't know where it is. They don't know how to report on it. To me, it's a loss of data. So we've got some great integrations with DLP vendors. You can leverage that for cloud. You can leverage that for on-premises. We've got some good audit trail. We've also, we integrate with antivirus solutions on premises. So keeping that, making it as secure as possible for them.
So I mean, a couple of the other things that I picked up from what you talked about that I'm just going to expand upon now. While we do keep your data, if you're using Citrix to store your data, all right, or if you have it on premises, you have the capability to encrypt those and own those keys. It doesn't matter whether we own it, you can actually hold the keys to that, or if it's on premises, you can hold and own the keys to that. And we can do something very similar around the metadata too, where that can be encrypted and you hold the keys for that as well. I think the antivirus one on premises is also, I think, a pretty good one that you called out on, and also the fact that we do that in ShareFile as a service, I think is quite often missed. Why is that important? If we think about all the ransomware that's coming out, it's not going to fix it, right? But it's going to give you a mechanism to understand when your organization has been impacted and how you can figure out how you need to roll back, should we say? Okay. I think the other things you need to think about within the overall architecture of ShareFile is you don't necessarily have to use a NetScaler. For me, if you know me, if you're on the webinar, you'll know that I always lead with NetScaler because I see the value in what it brings, not just to the entire Citrix workspace, but to everything else that we do. But if you're looking to really be tight and think about how do I control data that leaves my organization externally, you definitely want to be looking at NetScaler to front your NetScaler, your ShareFile on-prem storage zones. Why? Because it actually uplifts the security posture, and that's very well documented and described in the security white paper. I've dropped in the pages you should take a look at around what we're actually discussing here.
And also, that NetScaler, it can provide a SAML IDP integration. So on the enterprise license and above, you have the SAML IDP. And also, when you call support, it kind of makes things probably a bit easier for them to track everything from the outside all the way through to the storage zone itself if they were to troubleshoot, because now the traffic's flowing through a NetScaler appliance, not a third-party appliance, where you'll find that, okay, it's the network perimeter fault, or there's something wrong here. And, finding, troubleshooting all the way through, I think NetScaler makes sense in front of storage zones for those kind of particular reasons. They do help.
Great.
Yep.
So I think we'll move on, unless there's anything else you want to talk about in particular here, George.
No, I think we're going to cover a few more as we go along anyway with our other slides and demo.
So they're the pages that I talked to you around the security white paper. What I'm actually going to do is, we actually started this whole presentation in ShareFile. So I actually clicked that start presentation. So up to where we are now, it's actually being delivered through ShareFile. As you can see, I'm just flipping through the slides we've been through here. And I'm just going to switch over to the presentation, right? So actually locally installed. Why? Because I can, and just to actually show that and demonstrate the difference, the power that ShareFile can actually bring to you. We can actually deliver a webinar to you without actually having to use anything locally installed. We can just do it through a browser. Why? Because ShareFile gives you that capability. It's that lens back to your data, wherever it's at, whether it be in another enterprise file sync and share solution. So an example of that could be OneDrive for Business. George and I will go through and explain the value of where we add value to OneDrive for Business and Office 365. But it could equally be other personal enterprise files, personal file sharing services where data is actually sat in. So George, do you want to take us through some of the storage options? I pulled this one out for you.
Absolutely, and I'll kind of, that's the first one, is ultimately Citrix Managed Cloud. And again, it depends where the customers are. If customers need to leverage need to consume their investments, i.e. they've bought into a storage array which is going on for the next 5 years and they've got tons of storage to use, well, it might make sense for them to have it on premises. Now, a lot of customers choose, kind of have the checkbox of, right, we need it to be in a data center in our control. We want to integrate it with a DLP solution of what we choose. But when it comes to Citrix Managed Cloud, is customers want to move away from that storage array. So they're saying, well, we don't want to renew it in 2 years or a year or now. How can we start leveraging Citrix Managed Storage? And the benefits of Citrix Managed Cloud is that you can have multiple zones attached to your ShareFile account. So those multiple zones can be scattered around in any location you like. So when you buy storage from Citrix, we pool it on the account, and you can choose how many zones you want to attach to your ShareFile account. The on-premises provides you with the ICAP integration with DLP, but where you're using cloud storage, this can be done via a CASB provider, such as Netscope or Avanan as such. And also where customers want, as what you mentioned earlier, LJ, is management of those encryption keys. Whether they're going to be on cloud, they can leverage AWS's KMS service to control their own keys for that cloud storage. So although Citrix hosts the storage in the AWS or Azure data centers, they can manage their own keys, customers, by doing that. And also they want to kind of look to reducing the storage overhead or the management overhead they have on premises. The Citrix Managed Service does the backup, the retention, the restores. They provide the availability ultimately. DRBC, plans obviously will change. You don't have to replicate that storage yourselves and think of how am I going to be simulating a DR recovery scenario. And previews and edit, it's automatically in there to edit. Okay, you need an account. Now bring that to customer managed on premises. Customers want to leverage that investment on premises. They have compliance and regulations to have that on premises in the data center of their choice. So they choose to deploy a storage zone in their data centers of choice. They also have that existing DLP integration requirement into their DLP solution, and they do that via the ICAP protocol. And again, I'm not going to go through every point, but if you need to leverage your network shares, SharePoint and Documentum connectors, you do need to deploy a storage zone on premises. Whether you use the ShareFile data element of it or not, you'll just need a minimum, a couple of servers on premises to leverage that, acting as more of a proxy between your users and your network shares, SharePoint and Documentum libraries. The customer managed service, customers need to manage their backup, their retention, their restores. They need to integrate it with their AV and malware. They have to provide that availability for themselves, the replication, the DR, business continuity plans. If they want to leverage previews and edit, they can. They need to deploy an Office Online server on premises, and that's required.
Cool.
Okay.
So we did promise we're going to jump out of the slides. I'm just going to cover off bit of the areas that George is going to cover off, and I've got one demo that I just want to show before I hand over to George. So we're going to do the admin side of the house now around demonstration. So we're going to go through connectors, auditing, reporting, and then pretty much we're going to go through quite a bit around the security within ShareFile. But just before we get there, a lot of people say to me, well, does Citrix do different elements within the Citrix Workspace actually support modern things? Yes, we do. While we're not a company that develops things like biometrics, SAM or OAuth or things like that, we actually make a lot of that work. We enable a lot of that stuff. So you can do things like OAuth 2.0 today. You can do SAML 2. You can even do biometrics. So there's a company that's part of a Citrix Ready program, Beridium ID. They do some very cool and interesting stuff around allowing you to log on to different parts of the Citrix Workspace with using just biometrics. So you can go passwordless. So as an example, I'm just going to play this short video. So here we're going to log on to ShareFile. It's going to go to the ShareFile page. It's going to say log on with QR code. So we'll scan that QR code, right? Once that's then scanned, it's then going to trigger and say you need to do 4-finger biometric authentication. It's going to do that. He's going to say yes on his phone, and then automatically it's going to single sign Ross into his ShareFile account. So a lot of that capability is available today. You just need to leverage your investments, reach out to us, follow the links to Citrix Ready, and start to get engaged. George, I'm going to hand over to you. So
no problem.
It's going to be George Christophi, right? Just checking.
Yep, that's it. I can make myself a presenter actually. Show my screen.
Done. Well, I've done it.
Excellent. All right. So we've got a list of things. So let's go through them. And again, I'm not going to dive too deep because we've got 30 minutes, I think, just to go through all these features and areas. But let's start with what people have most gravitated to on a daily basis is Outlook. I know they access it from their phone, but ultimately people who log into any type of desktop launch Outlook. Most popular tool of, on a desktop is the Outlook plugin. So for example, I would just conduct a new email. Sorry, did you mention something else too?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's 2 questions, if you don't mind, just before we start. Sorry, that's my bad.
Yeah, sure.
So do you remember my section where we broke down the link to ShareFile? Do we have a list of the actions? So the D, the F, the FO, and all that sort of stuff? Or is that something that we can just stick on a blog post between the two of us? One?
Yeah, we can do that as a blog post because we'll just go and see what the different types of URLs are generated on folder and link creation anyway, and we can do that. There's not an official list out there which says these are the lists of links, but we can do something. It's not very big.
Okay, great. And then we've got a good one from James, which I think will tie in lastly to your demo that you'll have coming up around the auditing and reporting. Hi guys, great presentation so far. Are there any plans to change the reports from EST to local time? So I don't know if you'll be able to answer that, or maybe that's one we need to take back to the PM team.
We will take it back to PMs, but I know exactly what you mean. It's in EST time. The reporting servers are in EST time, so that's what it is at the moment. But definitely we'll take that away. It does come up.
Okay, brilliant. I'll hand it back to you, George, and just keep monitoring the questions.
Excellent. Okay, so for example, I'm going to share externally. I do have an encryption mechanism that I can apply to the email message itself. And what that does, it uses ShareFile as the storage for that as an object to transfer the message as well separately. So you'll have a message which is transferred encrypted, and also you can have the attachment as a link as well. But for this instance, I'm just going to attach a file, and I'll attach it from ShareFile and list out all my repositories. And as you can see, I've got a bunch of repositories here, that single pane of glass to access to multiple repositories. You could even give people Dropbox access, OneDrive, network shares, and you can share from all these locations. Just as a kind of demonstration, I want to show you, it embeds a link. You can customize all these areas. It tells you exactly when that link's going to expire, and a link goes out. That might be 100 gig in size per file, and that's what we support on a soft limitation. So I'll just do an initial share, okay, and I can share that out. Now, as you see, if I want to customize another email, and this time I can look at some custom settings. As you see here, I've enforced this to sign in, meaning I'm requesting authentication every time from this tenant account. which some customers choose to do. They don't want anonymous links going outside. So I'm going to leave it flexible for my user to choose how long they want the link to expire. And also, there's a couple of controls here. So full control means they can download it. View online is viewing online only. And at the moment, we've just got something that we're working on right now, fresh, which is dynamic watermarking in the products as well.
So George, if you can just pause for a second. There was a great question from Dale, and I'm smiling. He'll be smiling too because he knows you. We know each other. His question is, hi folks, I have a question concerning allowing access from trusted, non-trusted devices from desktop and web apps. Can you control what a user can do depending on the trust state? For example, we would not want to be able to download documents if we were using a browser from home, or be able to download from a desktop app on their home machine. However, we would want to allow them to view. So I think that ties in lastly to what you're actually just demonstrating right there.
Yeah, and also that we don't do that exactly today. That's a contextual access type of ability, depending on which device you're coming from. And you know as well, LJ, that's where we're going to with the whole digital perimeter project we're doing. So to provide that granularity.
So for the contextual piece of that answer to that question, all I'll say is please attend Citrix Synergy and you'll learn a lot. There are quite a few ShareFile sessions available around a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and some of the contextual piece will be covered off in and at Synergy.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do some blocks for those users outside, but ultimately, I know what you mean, Dale. That's a really good question. Is the contextual access based on where that person's coming from, which device they're logging in from, and again, yeah, Synergy will have some really great stuff around that topic. So for this instance, I'm going to be sharing out a document on here as well. So I set the policy to have full control. I've set the link expiration. Now I select the data, and then it crafts the link and puts it in. So again, I can send that out externally to someone. I'll call it SF again. There's not a problem there. Now, the biggest thing that it's not just about sharing, it's actually requesting data in. A lot of customers say, well, I need to request files in. How do I do that? And then it's very easy. Again, the reason I'm showing you the custom settings here is that you can force these links to all need authentication. I've left it for the user, but now I can ask for someone outside the company or inside the company to drop some data straight into a folder I'm not going to give them permission to. Okay, I may do it anonymous, but I'm crafting a little link here, and again, that's customizable as well. And I'm going to send it to the outside user. So I'll call that upload. Okay, so easy to use, but ultimately, let's see what it looks like for that Gmail account person I'm using. As you see here, that's an anonymous link, so they can download the health record application and view it within our content viewer of ShareFile. And I've given them the download ability too. Also, there's an activation link which just come because now I've asked for authentication. So I'm inviting this user to be authenticated onto my ShareFile tenant, but I haven't populated any name. So let's populate that as the end user. Sorry, this is the Friday fingers. ShareFile, okay, and we'll call it client. Yeah, I do want to call it ShareFile 1 because I've got 2 accounts, and they can set their own password. So your users externally are free users of the system. They're not joined to the domain, they're not part of the enterprise. They can consume ShareFile with a free license. Once they've authenticated, now they can view the document, the one I sent there. And also that request link, okay? So again, I sent that other link out. Let's go back up to here. This is the request link and the upload link. You'd be surprised. This is a very, very common use case, is sending, receiving, and also adding people to folders. So let's just choose something here. Let's put a folder access report up there and upload. And that goes straight up there. Again, that user sees what they've uploaded, but they don't have access to the file. You see there's some notifications trickling through. As you see here in the background for the employee. So they're seeing all the activity. Another thing I wanted to show you whilst we're on that kind of email experience, we've got an integration with Office 365 for the plugin. As I was in Gmail, I thought I'd show you a ShareFile integration that we have with Gmail too. So your user using Gmail, if they're an employee, they can use the plugin to access their ShareFile data. So again, I'm working in my lab. Is this going to work for me? Not very fast. So let me move on, and I'll come back to that piece anyway. Oh, there you go, burst into life. There you go. So from ShareFile, again, I can browse to those repositories. Now I'm logged in as the employee here, so it's a bit confusing. I'm using a client account, but I'm actually logged in as the employee into my ShareFile plugin, just to show you that, again, we can embed links into a Gmail message and send that out.
So George, do you mind going back and adding another link? I think it's worth pointing out to people that you can't just attach the root of someone's ShareFile folder. Why did we block that? Well, you could easily then send and obviously make sure all your data is sent out. So when you're sharing, if you click on share a file, you can obviously see any shared folders as well. You can't share the roots. You can only share individual folders or content within those folders. So you can't share the whole thing. Why? Because it could be seen as leaking intellectual property.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to be giving people the ability to do sharing of a folder anyway if they want to. And again, it only crafts a link, so it's not, you're not sending huge amounts of data as the person has to pull it down afterwards. The one thing I didn't show, and I'll do another one, let me just do an ad. Oh, sorry, I've got a, yeah, I just wanted to show you adding from my personal folders. Let's put something from here. Okay, edit message options. Here, the user can set as well the expiry, here with the expiry, they can say 3 days with the expiry, view only or full control, and the options here for notification, and maybe one per user of allowing. So again, it embeds that link again. I can delete that and just create the link again. But it gives you kind of that flexibility of using it across different solutions. Any other things there you want to add, LJ? And then
Yes. I think one of the things I'd like to talk about is let's say I'm processing I work for an insurance company and I'm processing a claim, but I've sent the wrong form to the wrong customer, and I've realized I've made a mistake. And typically, I think in most scenarios, you may send that as an attachment, but when you're sending it out through ShareFile, let's say you make that mistake. Does the user need to run to IT? Do they create a support case? What do they do? How quickly can they resolve the problem? You want to walk us through that?
Yeah, the most common, that happens quite a lot. Every time I ask customers, they've done it before, or they've done it recently or many years ago. You squirrel around into your sent items, and you're looking for a way to recall the message. You try to recall it, it's usually 99% failure, because if someone sees an email come through and you're trying to recall it, they want to open it more. So what we've built in is that you go to your sent items and you click revoke access straight from your sent items without the plugin. So now I'm killing the link directly to those documents. Now, if I encrypted the body of the email with the encrypted email, I could revoke access to the body of the email as well. So again, we brought it into the tool in the sent item so users can just quickly do it. You can also jump into the web interface and look at your links which have been crafted. As you see, there's a bunch of anonymous links here. I can expire link straight from the web interface as well, because every link crafted by ShareFile is placed in your sent items as well, in the SaaS tier. So there's a couple of ways you can revoke those links.
So I suppose also the nice thing is, let's say you only forget an hour late and then you revoke the link because you're a good person, you've done the right thing, so you come back from lunch. But let's say the users downloaded that document in the interim, then what, right? I think for me, there's a couple of things you can do. One, obviously, if you've set up ShareFile correctly, and you can use the adoption team to help with this, any uploads or downloads, you can actually monitor and see who's uploaded or downloaded, so you can see who actually downloaded the file. So if they have downloaded, you can actually give them a call and say, I've seen you've downloaded the file, you need to please remove this information. And obviously then go through your internal process to make them aware that you've actually passed someone's PII to someone else accidentally. But at least you have a way of understanding whether they did download it, did they not download it, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And when someone does download a document or views a document, it does get tracked within the audit trail here, so you can look at your activity log and see what's going on in there. And as a user, you've got full access into your personal folders, but in shared folders, you'll need the admin rights of a folder. So someone who's administering the folder, they can actually look in and see some activity quickly from the web interface, and they can see what's going on in their subfolders, and they can start going back, last 3 months of activity. There's going to be quite a ton of things there. So that gives visibility back to the user. I think a bit of control back to the user. Whereas before, how would they know on an NTFS level who's downloaded, who's accessed the document, back in the network share scenario? So, okay, moving on. Shall we? I'm sorry.
So I was going to say we've got about 20 minutes left. So do we want to jump onto some of the security stuff on the admin side?
Absolutely. Let's do that then. Let's jump into there and let's log in as an admin person so I can show you those.
So while George is logging in as an admin user, I think it's quite key to point out that if you think about how I described ShareFile early on, it's sort of the XenApp. It's a XenApp equivalent, but for your data in your repositories. Why? Because it gives you the ability to actually completely fan out into those different repositories, whether they be personal file sharing services, whether they be enterprise file sync and share services, whether it be on-prem network shares, Documentum, SharePoint sites. It gives you the ability to actually look at all of those things, but then anything that goes in and anything that goes out is audited and reported against. You can provide different levels of controls. You've seen George go through a couple of those demos. What actually happens is, as an example, on a network share, let's say I want to send, let's say, Citrix HDX RP for 2018, right? And I want to send that to someone, and I shouldn't be sending it. I'm doing it, let's say, hypothetically, maliciously. It will copy that to my file box, and then once it sends out from there, it's audited and reported against by Citrix IT, so they can actually see the file name, what it was, its classification, who it's gone to, did they download it, or did they view it online. So anything that goes in, anything that comes in, anything that goes out, we can audit and report against.
Yeah.
So I see you logged in, George. Over to you.
Okay, and so I think we'll start with this device security. So from a mobile perspective, we can give access to SharePoint network shares Documentum via the web UI, via the connectors externally. If the customer wants to configure that, that's not a problem. But I say, well, let's urge those external folk to use the connectors via a mobile app. That way I know that the documents are taken offline, they are encrypted at rest within the ShareFile application itself, and then out of the box you can set a passcode, PIN code, user selected. So if they do launch the app on their own BYO device, it's going to prompt them for a PIN or a password that they've set. And also, I would also leave them to automatically log in with domain credentials in the background. So enforce this out of the box, and also, set that to 30 days. And if they don't touch their ShareFile application on their device for 30 days, that means they're not really using it. The kids are probably using it for playing games or whatever. So why not just wipe the data after 30 days and wipe the account off that ShareFile account? You can then lock down the application so people can't do the open-in functionality. So out of the box, there's some, really great measures you can do to give people access to those network connectors and SharePoint on a mobile app, so it's more secure.
So I think for me, George, just on that area there, I think it's worth highlighting that everything you see in the custom there is actually will configure when a user downloads the ShareFile application from a public app store. There's no need for any MDM or UAM. However, we do enlighten those and actually add a lot more stronger security and also better productivity if you're integrating into the Citrix Unified Endpoint Management Stack, or a modern endpoint management stack, as some people call it, MEM. But the nice thing, I think, from within here is within a few clicks, you can actually start to restrict how your users consume content and the security around that. I think one of the favorite ones for me is you can disable immediately people once they've looked at a file, once they've downloaded it, you can stop them actually storing it. So the moment they close the app, they have to re-download the file. So it reduces that risk around people that are looking at very sensitive data.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, if we want to go on to a few more kind of permissions, I mean, there's a ton of things that you can do here. Let's go into the file settings here. This is where you find things around the retention, the global versioning policies, but also this is the kind of new feature that we're talking about, the watermarking, dynamic watermarking, how you enable editing. And also the one that a lot of customers are not aware of is we can allow for the on-premises storage zone to be integrated with the feedback and approval process. So it does support the cloud zones and the on-premises zone. So just so you know, you can enable or disable that here from the cloud rendering point of view on that setting. Any other areas that we should cover off there, LJ, you think, or should we move on to the
I think if we just touch on the auditing, we've done the auditing and reporting.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll cover the module itself quickly because we did the activity log from a folder level. That's right. Quickly having a look at the reports. I'm not going to sit there running a report. I'm just going to access and create a report just so you see what templates we have out of the box. Okay, so I'll just create that report, and they're pretty detailed. So, you know, we've got usage reports, access, you know, who's got what access to which area, who's changed access, you know, who's when people complaining, oh, you know, someone's deleted my data, and it's probably themselves sometimes, you know, storage detail to see what's going on with your storage, which shares have gone out, which links are open and gone out, which request shares are out. The users detail is quite nice because you can see which clients have been enrolled into the system, which ones have logged in, which date they've logged in at, whether, you know, the external users plus employees. So it's pretty, you know, decent, you know, reporting here that we have. And also, if you look at that, this is quite enough on a daily basis to be running, is who's logged in, what's downloaded, and you can kind of do a post-mortem on a folder or a particular user, and you want to see their activity. So you might want to pick onto that client that I created earlier, and you might want to look back at, you know, it's got to be today because I just created that person today, and I can run a report and see what activity on a particular person. So it's granular, and customers are really liking our reporting functionality there. And policy-based management.
George, we can also set these up as recurring reports, right?
Absolutely.
So you can set them up once and then come back and visit them. You don't have to do it every time.
And also, I like to give access to a folder for the compliance team, and what they will do, the reports will just populate into that folder on a daily basis. They don't have to go and run them themselves. You just have the recurring reports go into a folder, and the compliance team have got access to that folder. So they're always in there with their reports. Okay. Policy-based admin, something I really urge for customers to set up is that you can create user access policies, and you can define permissions to certain users in the business, you know, first line, second line, third line support, certain people in the business in compliance, they might want to have access to the reporting module, and other stuff. So rather than do it one by one, just add people to groups and policies. Also, file and folder management. So if I create the new policy, just show you there, we can set quotas for different users, set file retentions, expirations. We can allow people to change retentions or not. We can also allow people to manipulate the versioning or not, or we can force something down on certain groups of users. And I think making it really easy for that initial configuration and deployment in a company, use the policy-based administration. It's really much easier. And then I can just pin certain people to different zones depending on their geolocation. And all this can be integrated ultimately with your Active Directory, because your Active Directory groups will be synchronized to ShareFile and applied to the policies. So you just drop people into the right groups in AD, and they'll get the policies assigned to them automatically. So something I really wanted to touch on, something that's quite missed out there as well. Okay, so
I think just the final one, George, if you could just show the connectors page, just so people can actually see what capabilities we bring. When I say ShareFile for me is XenApp, but for your data sources, and when you see it, you actually understand why, because of everything it can actually hook into.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in my OneDrive for Business document area. I can download documents via the web interface. I can share them from here. But again, I'm going to show you the integration with the workspace that we have that makes this much easier, because I think people are used to going into Explorer to access their data and manipulate folders and files. But we can give access to on-premises SharePoint. I'm not sure if this is going to work if my SharePoint server is up and running, but again, having that single UI to those multiple repositories is probably really key for users to adopt. Sorry, I'm in a lab. SharePoint server is really, really slow. So browsing it can be kind of long up, and there it pops into life. It is a bit of a small server. So again, I can assign people to look at document libraries or just enumerate the document libraries they need rather than go into the web interface all the time, and they can access documents and share those out or just download and view them. Okay, but again, single user interface into multiple repositories. And I've got everything here. You'll probably have one or two extra ones for users. It depends on your scenario for your workplace. This is the most
couple questions, George, from Dale. Can you show how easy it is to set up how easy it is to do a SharePoint connector? 1, and then 2 from David. I don't see policy management in our ShareFile instance. Is that something that is coming, or is it already there? I'm not too sure if that's one of those instances where we roll it out and you have to ask for it, or is it an additional one?
Yeah, you have to get it enabled on your account. So usually, ultimately on POC accounts, we can enable them for you. If it's a production account, for example, you just request it via the help desk, say policy-based administration, can you enable it, please? And there is a different user management tool that you use. So if you go onto the Citrix downloads page of ShareFile, you'll see 2 user management tools that are available. One's for policy-based administration. They work slightly differently, so make sure you get the right one. So first get it enabled, or send an email over to LJ and I can get that enabled on the back end. But with the connector, the SharePoint connector, as what Dell mentioned there, if I go in as an admin, I can then look at the connectors here. Again, I don't want to assign connectors to individuals because that could be painful. So I can just go SP1, and you see it only selects my on-premises storage zone. So if I had a few on-premises storage zones in different geos, I would want to assign the connector to the appropriate zone, which is closest to that SharePoint farm, if you've got multiple farms globally. So I just put, well, nice and simple, SharePoint, that's what mine's actually called. And this is where, do I assign that to individual users? No, you have an AD group synchronized to ShareFile called SharePoint users, and you would browse down to it. And I'm not sure if I've got probably an example, but I'll just choose contractors as an example. Save. So anyone placed into the AD group synchronizes to ShareFile, that person will see the SharePoint connector appear on their mobile and their end user tool that they're using. Okay. I hope that answers the question. Cool. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does.
Okay,
so we've got about 5-6 minutes. So do you want to jump into the workflows piece?
I could do, absolutely. Yep. I wanted to touch on the actual integration into the workspace itself.
We'll do that first then, actually.
Yeah.
I think that makes more sense.
This is what I think that people are more gravitated to, is creating folders within their Explorer. And again, this is in ShareFile itself. So I could call that external one. And rather than having to go to ShareFile to apply the permissions, they can right click and do manage folder permissions from here. And again, I'm giving you an early preview of a beta that we've got out there at the moment, which we're working on at the moment. So I can add that external user and give them just download and view rights to this certain folder. And I can get notified on the folder alerts as well. So I can press done there. So now I've just done everything from Explorer, and I can then just drag and drop a folder into there. And what I've done here is ultimately mapped directly to personal folders, call it the home drive. I can map directly to OneDrive and call it anything I like. And usually I think you'll see departmental drives and global drives. So if users are using network shares and you want to move away, you can use our ShareFile migration tool to start moving data in the background. Want an upgrade, and you can seed the data into shared folders. And then when you want to cut over, you would do it again, but this time I would do ownership and permissions, i.e. transfer your NTFS permissions over to ShareFile permissions and just do the changes, and then change the GPO accordingly and provide your end user an experience which looks very, very similar or even the same as what they had before. You know, the H drive, home drive, G drive as global drive, T drive as department drive. So that's what I really wanted to show is this is in beta at the moment, but ultimately you can start migrating away from those network shares, translating the NTFS permissions and slowly moving to new cloud storage. So it accelerates your journey to cloud or cloud repositories as such. Okay. Sorry, I had to rush through that because I really want to show you the workflows as well. So let's quickly cover the workflows. LJ, do you want me to cover populating the workflow from a form or a mobile, or shall I just go through the approval stuff, do you think?
I think let's do the custom flows if you're up for it, because I think while the feedback one is good, I think the custom one resonates more, I think, with a lot of people.
Yep, absolutely. So in here, and again, I want to log out and log in as a...
So while George is doing that, there's a question that's coming from James, which I'll answer. So when is watermarking going to be available? You'll get more information at the Synergy timeframe. So I'm not going to confirm as when and how, but obviously you pay attention to the ShareFile sessions at Synergy. And if you're attending Synergy, definitely encourage you to check out the ShareFile sessions and you'll learn more.
Yep, absolutely. Travel approval. So I've got a bunch of forms and I like showing it from the mobile because you can put it to the ShareFile Workflows app, but we have got the form integration here. So let's quickly start populating a form. So my employee, or this is an external person now, actually a client, and they can start populating populating a form. So I want them to fill out, you know, they're going to be traveling, a traveler request form. Let's just write Norway just for the fun and put a date range when they're going. I'm going to leave on that day and come out back on 25th.
George, I'm going to throw you a curveball question as you're creating a workflow from Dale. Mm-hmm. Can you create a workflow that would require line manager's approval if the user wanted to share a file externally?
No, that's not in the solution at the moment, but again, that's something that they've definitely taken back to RPM previously, because I think that's a kind of a great use case of controlling sharing via using our workflow mechanism. But again, you know, okay. I'll take it back again.
Dale, we'll pick that one up after this. We'll follow up with you.
Okay. All right, so I'm just quickly populating something here, travel conference, and this is where it's nice on the mobile if I want to sign that. So I'm just quickly populating a form, and then I want to submit that form. And then what will happen in the background is that will create a PDF. And if I did ask for some, you know, images or videos, it would also upload that to a pack. But ultimately, the person who's my employee will receive an email notification shortly. And I think that's come through now, as you see. That's nice and quick. And I've got two people in the mix here. I've got an account here to review as a CC, or this person here who's received the email is the person who's going to approve the workflow. So they're looking at the travel approval and it's capturing all that information. Now, what we can do after this is the moment I press approve, I can create another flow to pipe that detail out in an Excel spreadsheet, or even another flow after that to post to a web service, meaning that customers are able to build an integration between that post to web service API into the system they want to post the detail back. So if they've got a SQL database and they want to post some of these metrics here or these detail captured into a database, they can do. So that's something that's there today. You should see that be popping up on your approved workflow. So for example, I've approved this, and that person who created that will get a notification back that it's been approved. So that will come very shortly here. I'm getting loads of notifications back to me. So it's something very simple. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I think we've run over a bit, but I just wanted to quickly show you the custom workflows ability that we have across web UI and mobile.
George, I think just before we wrap up, are you able to show the composer view, so how you actually create the form, just very quickly? I'm not expecting you to create anything, just show them what it looks like and the fact that you can just drag and drop.
Yeah, so
I think it just ups and tails it quite nicely.
Yep, that's a good one. And let me log in as a bit more of a admin. So with the workflows, we've been changing this, as you've seen. If you've had it enabled on your account, you'll be seeing it changing quite frequently, making it even more business user centric to be able to create their own workflows. You know, with the no code workflow ability. So if they create new workflow, we can do test one workflow, browse where you want the content or the responses to come into. So in here, I will go just on the route of flow, and I start building. And this is the kind of new stuff that you've seen is when a form's completed, this is the form here. Create a new form. Okay. Oh, how come I lost that? And set up form. Ah, okay. It's not happy with me.
Brilliant.
All right. Thanks. So yeah, usually I would see set up a form, and yeah, okay, it doesn't allow me. So 226. Okay, so I think we're moving on.
Not bad from the demo guys. One went wrong out of all of them, so not bad. So, folks, thank you very much. I hope you found the session useful. As you can see, there's a lot that ShareFile can do. We didn't even cover off everything else that we did want to talk about. I wanted to talk about. Why? Because we always prep for more, because there's so much we can talk about, and depending upon what questions and where people want to go, we can take it in different directions. George, thanks very much. Stephanie, I want to hand back to you. Or do you want me to just jump onto the last slide? Up to you.
Yeah, you can put up that last slide and then we'll close everything out. So while he's doing that, I put a couple links in the chat for you guys. We have a short survey that we love to get your feedback and comments. So please fill that out. It doesn't take very long, and it's just for CUGC use only. I also put a link to a forum thread at mycugc.org. If you do have more questions, please feel free to type them in the forum thread there. We'll make sure that LJ and George see those questions. And also, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, we will be sending them all the questions, and they'll do a nice write-up for us as well. It's also where you'll find a link to the recording. But in addition to that, you'll get an email tomorrow from GoToWebinar that will have a link to today's recording, to the same forum thread, and to the blog post that we mentioned earlier. And finally, for those of you who will be at Synergy, we hope that you'll come and see us. We'll be at the Community Hub in Synergy Park. I dropped another link in the chat for you to the CUGC at Synergy page, and that's where you can find everything has to do with CUGC at Synergy. They will be handing out T-shirts and talking, to everyone there. And if you're able, we have our pre-game kickoff party on Monday night. So that's also where you can register to get on the list for that party, and we hope to see you there as well. And with that, I just want to thank George and LJ for great demos and presentation. It was a great hour of information. Hope to see more from you guys. And we'll get something going here again soon. I think we'll have a blog post from you and hopefully more content to come. Absolutely. Thank you.
Stephanie, we're more than happy if you want to stop the recording. We're more than happy to stay around for about 5-10 more minutes. If you want to stop the recording, we'll answer any questions that come in if you want. More than happy to.
Sure. Hold on one sec. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now. Hope you all have a great day.